I said, here's what I noticed. Before service, during the service, right now after the service, as people are milling around, I noticed a theme, the same thing. These people talk and act like Jesus is alive and standing in the middle of this room.
Bob, man, it's so good to have you here with us today. And man, so we've known each other 30 years.
Yeah, maybe a little more, but for sure 30.
Yeah, that's hard to believe.
It's crazy.
I was barely out of my 20s when we met. That's hard to believe. I'm now in my 60s. That's amazing.
Yeah.
But man, I've told people, before we get into what I really want to talk to you about, I've told people that I've probably laughed harder with you than any other person. There's something about your dry sense of humor when we're together at a long period of time. Let's put it this way. It wouldn't be good for me to attend a conference with you because I would laugh a lot and not pay attention. But
right.
I have so enjoyed our friendship and just, not just the spiritual, although I appreciate that. And that's what we're going to talk about today. But do you remember us having a conversation about a guy that had no neck?
Remind me.
Well, we won't get into it, but I'll have to remind you later.
Okay.
I laughed so. I was telling my wife about it the other day.
Oh
man, I laughed about
wow! Well,
that.
I can't wait to hear that one.
It was on our way back from Springfield many years ago.
Okay.
So anyway.
Wow.
So Bob, tell me. So I know your story, but I'm sure there's pieces of it I don't know. I think I might have met your wife before I met you.
I bet you did.
Because she went through so we met at Teen Challenge.
Yeah.
I had worked there about 7 years, and about 6 years into my time at my 14 years, Warren Hunsberger came on, became the executive director.
Yeah.
And about a year later, you came on, but I met you before that time because you were very close. You were part of Warren's board at the church he had planted and so forth.
Yeah.
So.
My wife was a student in the Omaha Teen Challenge Center, and we were separated before she went away, and I was divorcing her to marry somebody else. Wow. And Will McFarland, Roger had Will McFarland come to Colfax.
Wow. Yes,
and I knew
that.
nothing about the guy, didn't care, honestly. And somebody said, hey, your wife and the ladies are going to be out at Colfax Teen Challenge on this given night. You ought to go out there. You could see her. And I said, well, I don't want to sound like a jerk, but I don't really want to see her. I don't really care, honestly. I hate. So they said to me, well, we had a 3-year-old daughter. They said, well, it'd be good for your daughter to see her mom. And I thought, okay, yeah, you're right. So I went out there. And this was during a spiritual emphasis week.
I remember Will, because Will had been Bonnie Raitt's guitarist.
Yep.
He had played with some of the biggest bands, got radically saved, and just a neat guy. And so that was when you came out. Okay.
I came out, and he shared, and I didn't have any interest in the things of the Lord. I guess I was just there so our daughter could see her mom. But several things he said really resonated with me. I was just telling someone the other day, one thing that he said that for whatever reason stuck with me. He said, we have this, many have this idea of the Christian life as just like this picture postcard, footprints in the sand. It's just me and Jesus walking down the beach of life. He said, Christian life isn't me and Jesus, it's you and me and Jesus. And that, I didn't know it then, but that would be a precursor to everything the Lord would show me from that point on about the depth and the value of relationship.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I, you and I have talked enough, and I've read some of your material. That's so interesting because that is a cornerstone to what you do and how you help other men.
Yeah.
And here that seed was, fascinating.
Yeah.
So what year was that?
That was, I believe, 92. Summer of 92,
really?
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was because I lived, I'd moved back home to be with our daughter when my wife went to Teen Challenge, and so it was just our daughter and I, and we went to this little Assembly of God church of about 100 people because my wife was going there, and I thought, well, it's good for kids to be in church, so I'll take her. I mean, I really didn't have any interest, but I'll take her. And the first time I was there, the very first time, and this is a little more lively. I grew up Catholic, and so this is a more lively atmosphere than I was used to. And after that very first service, the pastor said to me after the service, he said, well, what'd you think? And I said, what do I think? These people are nuts. He kind of laughed. And went, yeah, we're like that. And he said, but really, what'd you think of the service? I said, here's what I noticed. Before service, during the service, right now after the service, as people are milling around, I noticed a theme, the same thing. These people talk and act like Jesus is alive and standing in the middle of this room.
Wow.
And he just went like this. He just went.
Wow. Was that Warren?
Yeah, and I couldn't, I just couldn't put that together in my head. Jesus, this wasn't we didn't just conclude a memorial service for a dead guy. He's alive.
Yeah.
And these people seem to know that because the way they act and the way they speak. And when we read God's word, the Bible, we're not reading some stories about a guy laying in a grave. He's alive.
And prior to that, your reference point was more the alternative that, good moral guy that died 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, what that people would say that about every church we're involved in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Boy, no kidding.
So how did Diane meet Warren and Gay then? Diane, your wife,
my wife,
the directors of Teen Challenge, who were pastoring at that time.
Correct. We'd been married for maybe 9 years at that time, and I was always unfaithful to her in many ways. I started a relationship with someone I worked with, and so we traveled all over the country on business. So we were out together all the time in hotels and different places. And my wife knew. Wives know. That's what I always tell guys. You think you're just now releasing this information. Your wife has known.
Yeah.
She can't validate anything, but she's not. Anyway, she knew, and I finally, after probably 2.5, 3 years, I admitted, here's what's going on, and I'm going to leave you, and I'm going to marry this girl. And my wife said to me the craziest thing. Right off the bat, she said, God's going to save our marriage. And I was like...
Was she walking with the Lord at the time?
Yeah. Much more than I, for sure. But and when she said that, I was kind of like, really? I don't really want him to, So we went to a counselor because I figured if we're going to go to divorce court, and I'd like to see my daughter have some sort of joint custody. So I'll go to a counselor. That'll look good. I'll even go to a Christian counselor. That'll really impress the judge. So we went to this counselor who I didn't really care for, but to be fair to him, I wouldn't have liked anybody at that point. And I didn't. Nothing really resonated. He did say one thing. We were there a couple times. He said one thing that landed. He said, this relationship with this other woman that will never last. I said, well, okay, well you don't know her, so how are you able to say that? He said, it's pretty simple. Any relationship established on deceit doesn't stand a chance. Okay, I'll give you that one. Then he suggested, here's where things really took a turn. The best thing he did for us, he suggested we go to a weekend marriage retreat that was coming up. I think it was put on by Campus Crusade for Christ.
Yeah, what did they call? I remember those. Being in Des Moines,
Dennis Rainey ran that arm of that ministry. I can't remember the name of it, but it was you know the gist. So we went. Didn't want to go at all, but again, I was just there to check a box so I could tell the judge I tried. So Friday night, Friday night, it's the hosts of this kind of the MCs of this whole thing for the weekend. Pretty much are Barbie and Ken. And it's like, you got to be kidding. I'm sitting here all weekend in this. Everything was kind of scripted, and then it was good people, good hearts, I'm sure. It just
and the way I know you, Bob, the way you're wired, that would have burn it to the ground.
Exactly. I pretty much in my head was like, please, come on, man. And it's going to be a great weekend. You're going to have a date night, and you're going to write love letters to each other. And both Diane and I looked at each other and went, no. So we sit through that whole thing. Sunday afternoon, the grand finale is the women in one room, the men in another. And afterwards, it's done. You go home. So I'm waiting for her after the men's session released a little early, and I'm waiting for her, and I see her coming down this hotel escalator with a woman who I've never seen before. And they're kind of chatting to each other and looking at me, and pretty clear they're talking about me. And she said, my wife said, "You are not going to believe what happened." Well, what's that? She said, "I was sitting in a row of chairs all alone." She said, "There must have been 30 or 40 chairs in this row. Nobody sitting in that row with me. I had my purse on the chair next to me." She said, "Out of the corner of my eye, I see this woman come down the row. She comes all the way. She moves my purse off the chair, sits next to me. She said, introduces herself. She said, 'Hi, my husband and I have noticed you guys since Friday night. We've been praying for you. God is going to save your marriage.'"
Wow.
I couldn't believe it. I played it totally cool, but something in me just got hit.
Wow.
And I said, "Oh, okay, okay, well, let's go." And she said, "Well, there's another thing. We can't go just yet because I kind of promised him we're going to have lunch with him." And I'm thinking like in a couple weeks. She said like in 20 minutes. And I was 30, probably at that point I was 33, 34 years old, and I was a major isolator. My whole life. I worked in film and video production. I was an engineer. So I had coworkers and I had friends kind of, but I didn't have anybody who really knew me. Because I had a guard up all the time. And so I didn't have any relationships of authenticity or any depth at all. And when I sat down with this pastor, and then I told her, I said, "I'm not having lunch with a pastor. Come on." So when we sat down, it was like in 60 seconds, like this pastor and I had known each other our whole lives.
Really?
It was just crazy.
So the way Warren talked to you just really clicked.
Just resonated. It was, in fact, later on in that lunch, I remember saying to him, "Are you sure you're a pastor? Because I don't think pastors act like you." I don't know what pastors act like, but just kind of being a smart aleck. And he laughed. He said, "Oh, they tell me I am, so yeah." But we just totally connected, and there was no judgment. There was no condemnation. I know my wife. I know she had told his wife exactly what was going on in our lives. She didn't hold anything back.
Which, probably you found out over the meal, but you find out later at least that Warren had a very similar story. And God just intervened. He crawled out of bed with the woman he thought he was going to marry and went back home to his wife. Just the Spirit of God came on him and said, "You need a Bible." And wow. It's fascinating, Bob, because you and Warren were so close, and now knowing that backstory, it makes sense, and how God put him in your life. And then you speed forward. Now Warren's with the Lord, has passed away this spring, and of course Michael, his oldest son, who now runs Teen Challenge, did the officiated, but you spoke at the funeral. You were the other person that did, and man, I wrote you. That was phenomenal. I mean, just homiletically, it was so well done. But what you shared was so powerful, both you and Michael. But I was thinking about this morning, how God put Warren in your life, and you guys ran together for decades.
Oh, yeah.
Very, very close.
Yeah, we were, we became neighbors. Fast forward from that lunch, and a couple years later, they bought a house next door to us. It's one of those things where you just walk into each other's homes, open the refrigerator. He opened my refrigerator more than I opened his, and went on vacations together and mission trips, and just very intertwined in everything.
So how long after that first meeting did you really surrender to the Lord?
It was probably a year and a half, maybe
Wow.
2 years.
Really, that long?
Was a slow adopter.
But you were still interacting with Warren. You guys became friends.
Yeah, my wife and I were separated. And Friday night, I would drive by and pick her and our daughter up, and we'd go to Warren's house and have pizza with him and his family. And it was never anything. It was never a big Bible study. It was never intense prayer. It was just kind of hanging out and no counseling, but maybe a little bit of that and some of the Lord. But it was just being connected.
Wow.
It was just relationship.
And did you dread those times, or did you look forward to them? Or?
I think I look forward to them for the most part. Yeah, I'm sure I didn't ever dread them.
Yeah.
I look forward to some more than others. But
Yeah.
it was just, and I didn't know what was going on. But of course, the Lord had a plan.
Yeah.
He was introducing me to relationship.
Yeah. And just by osmosis, what a healthy family, healthy marriage. You just,
Yeah.
kind of dismantle all those preconceptions of, the Ken and Barbie.
Wow.
Wow.
They are not Ken and Barbie.
Yeah.
They are not Ken and Barbie.
Wow, that is amazing.
Yeah.
And so then you ended up, really, you're all in, you get saved, and you end up on the board of this church.
Well, yeah, and so when my wife went to Teen Challenge,
So where did she go to Teen Challenge in that scenario?
she went probably after that initial meeting, lunch meeting, maybe a year and a half later. She was a school teacher, and they'd been talking to her about Teen Challenge, and so they said, "Hey," she said, "at the end of the school year, I'm going to go to Teen Challenge. You can move home and take care of our daughter, and save some money, so we're not owning two places." And so I did. And the day we took her to Teen Challenge, I thought this is the greatest day of my life. We drove there, and I just thought, man, finally she'll be gone. I like these new friends. That's cool. That's great. But she'll be gone, and I can have the house to myself, and I can just be alone. And by the time she gets out of Teen Challenge, we'll be divorced. I'll be gone.
Wow.
And what a great plan, I thought. And when we dropped her off at Teen Challenge, we unloaded everything, all her bags, and put them on the porch, and kind of awkwardly met the staff, and it's kind of weird. And my daughter and I got in the car to leave, and I started pulling out of the drive there, and I glanced back at our daughter, and I thought, well, she's 3 years old. I should somehow make this goodbye a little bigger deal. I didn't have anything specific in mind. So I parked the car, and we got out, and my wife was standing at the steps on that front porch, that big front porch there, standing on the sidewalk. And I went up to her, and I had no plan. I guess I was just going to say, "You want to hug your mom again?" I don't know. And when I got up to her, I absolutely lost it. I absolutely lost it. And I said the words, I couldn't believe these words came out of my mouth. I said, "I am so sorry. I love you." And she had told me prior to that how many years, probably days, months, and weeks it had been since I'd said those words to her. Wow. She knew. And it was coming out of me, and it was authentic and confusing at the same time. And I didn't know what the heck happened. Well, I know now it was the Holy Spirit.
Wow.
So then when we were back home, the people from this little church would invite my daughter and I over for dinner. The kids can play on the playground, and we'll cook hot dogs or whatever. And I always said what I always said to those kinds of opportunities: "Thank you. I'm not available that night." Or, whatever, just not feeling. It's always an excuse. And one night somebody called and from the church and invited us over. We had a little conversation, and I made up an excuse, can't make it, And this is the Holy Spirit. And I hadn't even surrendered to Jesus yet. I hung the phone up, and this thought dropped into my head: "Bob, you're 30. I was 35 then. Bob, you're 35 years old, and your entire life you've made excuses for why you can't connect with people."
Wow.
And when I sensed that, no argument. I could validate that was true. And I just said to myself right then and there, next time someone invites us, I'm going to say yes.
Wow.
And
Did you know that was the Lord, or did you think
no.
it was just your thinking?
Yeah, I thought it was just a thought.
Wow.
It was a good thought.
Yeah. You recognized
It
the truth of
resonated.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so somebody did invite us because they're persistent. And the night came for us to go, and I kept thinking, between work and the time I had to be at their place, I need to call them and cancel. But I need to be respectful and not wait till the last minute because, I'm a jerk, but I'm not a rude jerk. I can't remember what I got busy with, the mail or my daughter skinned her knee or something, and it got too late to cancel on them, so I just went. And we got home that night, put my daughter to bed, and I remember sitting there thinking to myself, that was not really that big of a deal. That wasn't painful. It wasn't hard to talk with these people. It was just kind of normal. I think I could do that.
Wow.
And for the next 10 months, every time somebody invited me, there was an opportunity to engage, I said yes.
Wow.
And I showed up. And if it was a no, it was a legitimate no, finally.
Yeah.
But I surrendered to Jesus finally. So that relationship was intact, and I began building these relationships. And about 10 months after that initial phone call where my final inauthentic no to somebody, 10 months later I'm praying one morning, and this question drops into my mind from the Spirit. And the question is, when was the last time you looked at porn? In those days, it was the early 90s, porn didn't just come to you. You had to go get it.
Yeah.
So when was the last time you went and you got porn? And I don't know, well, when was the last time you were with these people or you hung out with that person or all these, bad things? I don't know. I don't know. And the final question was, well, when was the last time you even thought about any of this stuff, any of this sexual sin and adultery and pornography and all? When was the last time you even thought about that? And then I started to wise up that these aren't random questions. I think this is the Holy Spirit. So I said, I don't know, Lord. It seems to me that this is no longer in my heart. Did you do something? Would you show me what you did? Because I want to tell everybody what it's like. I think I'm free. I want to tell everybody about it. And he did. Yes, it was him. And so I told everybody, man, Jesus will set you free. And they go, how? I don't know, but he just will. So I started praying, God, show me. I don't believe you love me more than you love anybody else. You didn't lay something on me that you're not willing to give to everyone. Would you begin to show me the truths and the principles and all the things that you've done and are doing in my heart so I can share them with everyone so they can be free too? And
wow.
Of course he answers that prayer.
And now that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
So there's a couple things that just intrigue me about all this. So when just in the timeline, so I can get it straight in my own head, when did you end up coming on staff then, around that situation? About how long after?
I came on Teen Challenge staff about 2 years after I surrendered to Jesus, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
But there had been, there's theories of discipleship and theories of evangelism, and some people say that discipleship begins before you're saved. It's they use this phrase, a place to belong before you believe, which you're such an example of that. You found this group of people to belong with, so you were already being discipled. So you ended up coming on staff and then serving in that role. How many years were you on staff?
Well, I still am.
At Teen Challenge.
I still am.
So you're still working with...
30, across 30 years a couple months ago.
Wow.
But that first day was interesting because, this was, as you recall, this was a brand new program that didn't exist before. This is a reentry program that kind of existed. But this is going to be a whole different, I didn't know any of that.
Yeah.
So it was easy. I didn't have to scrap that. They just said, here's the end result.
You were pioneering a new expression of Teen Challenge because the idea was that we'd see guys go through 10, 12 months of discipleship, and then they'd go home and fall.
Yeah.
So we wanted kind of a bridge between that, more freedom, but a place to come back to.
Yep.
And so you pioneered that in the very building that your wife, you wept with your wife.
In fact, when she was a student in that building, the directors lived in that third floor apartment, Will and Jackie. She called me one night on her phone call night, and I wasn't a believer yet. And I said, must have asked her, what'd you guys do tonight? She said, well, we were up in the director's apartment watching a movie tonight. She said, I had this weirdest thought, though. She said, in the middle of the movie, it just occurred to me. I thought, someday we're going to live in this apartment. But she said, that doesn't make any sense because you don't even like Jesus. And this is a women's teen challenge center. I don't know what you'd be doing here. And a couple years later, we lived in that apartment.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Wow.
But on that first day, so we moved in there like a Friday night. And Monday morning, you guys sent 8 students over.
Wow.
And so there are 8 students, and they show up, get out of the van, and they say, what do we do? I'm thinking, okay, I said, why don't you go put your clothes away? That'll buy me some time to figure that. They come down after 20 minutes, 30 minutes or so, and they say, well, okay, that's all done. Now what do we do? What's the program? And I said, I don't know, guys. We don't have a program. Let's just pray and ask the Holy Spirit to help us make this up. And that's what we did. We just made it up.
See, Bob, I didn't realize, because I was the director back in Colfax at the time. I didn't realize that that's how that happened. But I do, and I've told you this before. There are certain students I can look at and recognize they would have never made it without you in their life. The way you interacted with them, the way you would press them on things, just the way you carried yourself. You were the perfect guy for that. And but I had no idea. I was thinking there was a program that you jumped into, but wow.
I had no blueprint, nothing. I just, as a believer for 2 years, that's all I had.
Wow.
And turns out that's all I needed. So,
And so now you've been working for Teen Challenge over 30 years.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Not so much these days. I mean, Michael, these younger guys are running it, and they're knocking it out of the park. So I tell them, hey, you guys call me if you need me, and they never call. So because they're doing a great job.
I was just out there the other night, and just such just a warm affection and just appreciation for what they're doing, and still carrying it. And they've taken it so far beyond.
Yeah, I taught a class there last Thursday night.
Did you?
And likewise, I was standing in the chapel, and I was standing there thinking, gosh. In fact, I mentioned Will McFarland in the first time I was in that building and pointed to the section where I was sitting. Yeah.
I have stories too where God spoke to me. I can tell you right where the pillar was. I mean, it was a cornerstone for my life, and that's awesome. Yeah. So even though you're doing this, you're involved with your church. You're in leadership there, and but you also have Libertas Mentoring.
Yeah.
And so tell me about that.
Yeah, so I started, Libertas is an extension really of what I've been doing for all these years anyway, discipling guys. But this is, I don't want to use the word formal, a little more focused maybe. It is specifically for guys with dealing with all kinds of addictions and strongholds, with an emphasis on sexual sin.
Yeah.
The reason that's an emphasis is because that's my background. I was never in the drug culture or anything like that, but I was heavily involved in all that other darkness. And the latest Barna research shows that I think it's 49%, about half of those who identify as Christians, which Christian, that's kind of a broad category. What's that mean? But about half of them say that they use porn regularly. Wow. And of those, here's where it gets worse. Of those, 54% say that they're pretty comfortable with their level of porn use. And way down in the single digits, maybe around, maybe barely out of double digits, 10 or 11% say that the church they attend has any kind of program or any kind of ministry to help them deal with that. And when I read those stats, I think two things. One, primarily, the first thing is those 54% who are comfortable with their level of porn use, you you've made peace with the enemy.
Yeah.
You've done exactly what God told the Israelites not to do.
Right.
Which is what they did too. They made peace and intermarried and adopted their customs and worshiped their idols.
Yeah.
You've done the same thing, and I've done it in the past too, but you've done the same thing. And one of my clients goes to, so I have clients out of state who I meet by Zoom. So one of my clients goes to a very large church, and I asked him, what does your church, how does they address this topic? And he said, they don't. Well, is it ever mentioned from the pulpit or just, obviously in an appropriate way? Nope. The Sunday morning experience is just, it's good. It's a good vibe. We want everyone to kind of be happy. I said, well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Because a church the size of his, I don't know how many people it is, but it's very large. There's hundreds of men sitting out there.
Yeah.
Hundreds of them. Some of them might even be on the staff.
Yeah.
Who are wrestling with this.
So you're saying the stats are approximately 50%, and then half of that, so 25% of the church, statistically, males are involved in porn on a continuous basis and are okay with it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
which is as you know, one of the fallacies of that is that particular brand of sin is that I'm not hurting anybody else.
Yeah.
It's just something I consume, and it doesn't hurt anybody. Well, there's an old saying, somebody smarter than me said, your soul is dyed the color of your thoughts. Your mind, will, and emotions are dyed, or tainted by the color of your thoughts.
Yeah.
And when I teach that at Teen Challenge, I've got a picture of a dye pack. So somebody robs a bank, and they run out on the sidewalk, and this dye, it blows up. And so there's a picture of this big wad of money laying on the sidewalk, and it's all stained with red ink. Well, it's pretty easy to find the person who stole that. They're tainted with red dye all over them.
Yeah.
And in the same way, you think that your consumption of pornography or your sexual sin only affects you, but it's tainting everything you do, the way you interact with people, the way you see relationships. It goes back to the garden. It's a lie about who God is.
Yeah.
And you get that off everything. Your Watchman Nee says, if you want to see if a thing is right or not, draw it out to its natural conclusion. Anything that's 1 degree off in the beginning will be miles off in the end.
I've never heard that. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, that's just disturbing.
Yeah.
And for people to be sitting in the pew, we used to have this saying out at Teen Challenge: the same sun that melts the butter hardens the clay.
Yeah.
And when you sit under the preaching of the word, the presence of God, but hold to your sin, it actually hardens your heart.
Yeah.
You don't. It doesn't tenderize you. You become more hardened, and those strongholds, those mental justifications set in. And that is disturbing.
Yeah, and so that's what Libertas Mentoring is about, is helping guys see that any addiction, but especially sexual addiction, is the clinical phrase is a attachment relationship attachment disorder. One of my favorite books on the topic, False Intimacy by Dr. Harry Schomburg. His premise is we're hardwired for a relationship with him first, and then it's displayed with others.
Yeah.
And you've got to have both.
Yeah.
And I had neither.
Yeah. I don't want to get too detailed here, but I mean the whole act of sex, sexual intimacy.
Yep.
We call it a climax for a reason.
Yep.
It's the culmination of all the relational work that goes before it. And then it's an enjoyable, beautiful thing that knits two souls together.
Yeah.
The two become one.
Yeah.
Pornography promises the experience without all the work.
Yeah.
But it actually works exactly the opposite. It keeps you from connecting with people. Pretty soon,
absolutely.
I remember a guy back when I was in Teen Challenge, this would have been down at Cape Girardeau. I went in through 83 and 84. And there was a guy I met down at Cape that had gone on a pass to go home and visit his wife. And he came back and he confessed to me. He said, I would rather masturbate than be with my wife
Yep.
because she couldn't compete with the fantasy in his own mind.
Yep.
Everything was perfect. There was no rejection, no awkward emotions,
Yes.
not having to deal with his own insecurities.
Yep.
And no one fantasizes about being rejected. No one
Right.
fantasizes about. So it's the hard work of relationship
Exactly.
where that's the culmination, that's the reward, that's the zenith of it. But if we skip all that, man, it delivers something completely opposite. It's just,
Exactly. Yeah, those false relationships are, not based on vulnerability, surrender, giving. It's all, I'm a consumer.
Yeah.
I'm just taking.
Yeah,
It's all
you're a
for me.
means to an end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody I know once said that they considered sexual sin of different flavors. I like the way they positioned this. They said it's all a pacifier. We've got as I left home this morning, we have our newest grandchild, our 3-month-old granddaughter in our house.
Wow.
And when her tummy's full and her pants are empty and everything else is good, but she's fussy, you just throw a pacifier in her mouth and she's solid for a while. She doesn't, it's not a breast, it's not milk, it's not sustenance, but she's good with it for a while. And that's what sexual sin is. I'm good with it. Intellectually, I know it's not the real thing, but it gets my needs met and I get that quick dopamine hit.
Yeah.
I've got shame and condemnation, but that'll wear off, you think. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Back to what you were saying about you had made a comment about relationships and sin. There was somebody came through Teen Challenge years ago. I don't remember who it was. They worked for another Teen Challenge, were passing through, did a chapel, but they said this, and it really stood out to me, and I've thought about it many times since. They said, all sin is relational in nature.
Yeah.
There's no sin that doesn't affect relationships. Man, and I tried to disprove that in my own mind, argue with it, but the more I've thought about it over the years, the more I'm convinced they're exactly right.
Yep.
And so therefore, healthy relationships are one of the greatest bulwarks against temptation and sin.
There's a video that I show the guys and my clients. It's a TED Talk by a guy by the name of Johann Hari, who's pretty controversial. Not a believer that I have any knowledge of. He's controversial because, if you look him up, you'll see he's been, it's alleged many times in his career that he's embellished things, that he's ripped off statements or truths from other people, so controversial in that regard.
Yeah.
But the title of this TED Talk is Everything We Know About Addiction is Wrong. And he talks about these studies with lab mice, but I'll fast forward to the end. He said the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is relationship. And it's interesting, and it for sure applies in the realm of sexual sin, but I think it applies across the board. One of the things he said is that there's an actual experiment in the 60s, it's called the Vietnam War, where you've got thousands and thousands of American soldiers heavily addicted to drugs overseas. And as the war is winding down and we're going to be bringing these troops back, the psychiatric and the psychological community is saying, well, we need to gear up for all these patients we're going to have in our rehab center, in our treatment centers. And a very, very small percentage of them ever needed treatment. When they came back, they just picked up their lives and went on with relationships.
Plugged back into their old relationships.
Yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, Bob, it's so evident when I hear your story and, how here you were, something as simple as, I won't lie, I'll come to dinner. I won't make an excuse. I'm going to come to dinner. And you start doing that even before you've really surrendered to the Lord, and you begin to realize, man, this stuff's falling off my life. I'm not pacifying myself because I'm going to the real thing. I don't need a plastic nipple in my mouth.
Right.
Because the real sustenance of real relationship.
Yeah. Satan is such a, he's pretty good at his job, honestly. Kill, steal, to destroy. And he's we know he doesn't create anything. He counterfeits. And he counterfeits, in this realm, he counterfeits relationship with sexual sin, as we just talked about. And, it's easy to bite off on it. These days it comes to you. You don't have to go looking for it. But when I was a kid, I said I was raised Catholic. I was kind of a weird one because I actually felt like, in my family, I felt like there's something to this whole church experience. I don't know the rest of them. We just kind of went whenever we went and if we went. But I was always drawn to it. But as I sat in our parish, especially as I got older into high school, it just occurred to me that, these people, being all these people sitting in this mass, they all get it. It being connection with him or whatever, they all get it, but I don't get it. My takeaway was there's something wrong with me because they seem to be. I didn't talk to anybody to see if there's just something wrong. And then when I was in a math class in I think 6th grade, I got called up to the board, and in the late 60s. In education, you were called up to the board to solve an equation or finish a sentence or whatever, and you stayed there until you got it.
Wow.
You didn't, if you couldn't get it, we didn't care about people's feelings, You did, and for whatever reason, I could do math okay, but for whatever reason that day I wasn't getting it. And after about probably 20 seconds, I didn't care about the equation. I just wanted to sit down.
Yeah.
Everybody in the class is just sitting there staring at you, waiting for you to get it. I couldn't get it. And finally, the teacher let me sit down. But that just reinforces right here, there's something wrong with you.
Right.
And that same year, I was delivering newspapers one morning, and I was molested on a paper route.
Wow.
And this guy came around several times, and he parked, and he said something out the window to me, and I couldn't hear him. So I got closer, and I couldn't hear him. He was talking pretty low in his voice, and now I know why. As I got closer, then I could hear it. Well, by then I was close enough he could do his thing. And my takeaway from that was, okay, so now I've got two things in my life. There's something wrong with me, and there's something wrong with other people, and you can't trust them because when they say they want something, whatever it is they're verbalizing, that's not what they really want. They've got ulterior motive. So you always have to have your guard up. So naturally, my response was, I'm going to keep everybody out here.
Yeah.
And I'll be the funny guy and the smart aleck and whatever, if just to cover up my insecurity.
Yeah.
So when I say all that to say this, by the time that lunch meeting came with that pastor and his wife, I already believed that God existed. I believed God was real and the devil was real, and that's about all I knew. So I was open to spiritual things, but it had to be authentic.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
One thing stood out to me, Bob, when you were talking about when you dropped Diane off at Teen Challenge. That's so intriguing to me. Mm-hmm. You start pulling out that, I probably ought to go up and, for Emmy's sake, and when you do that, all of a sudden, this stuff that's in you weren't even aware of.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the issues with when we don't have relationships, we don't know what's in us.
Yeah.
Those things, it's relationships are what put a demand on things. It's like there's things that I don't discover outside of the interactions with others, and it's not just their insight, it's just the interaction kind of taps into some things.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's so interesting. There's a verse in 1 John chapter 1, little passage there, and it says, if you walk in the light as he is in the light, you have fellowship with one another, and then the blood of Jesus will cleanse you.
Yeah.
So there's walking in the light, transparency. So there's this trap as a kid you learned, can't be open, can't get close. Yeah. There's something wrong with me. I don't want anybody to know that. And I can't trust them. I can't be honest with them. I can't get close to them. But if we have transparency, then there's intimacy. Mm-hmm. And then John ties that into cleansing from sin. Yeah. It's that element of our walk with God that, most people think, well, hey, I just need the Lord. The Lord's going to cleanse me. The Lord will forgive you,
Yes.
but He's going to use others to cleanse you.
Yes.
And you cannot be free.
Amen.
It's not a solo thing. It's what Will McFarland said, planted that seed.
Well, and that's what I mentioned at Warren's funeral service was John chapter 11, Lazarus. Only Jesus can speak the word and raise him to life.
Yeah.
And Lazarus, that fascinates me. Lazarus comes out bound hand and foot. The guy still isn't free.
Yeah.
And Jesus turns to the people and says, "It's your responsibility. You set him free."
Yeah.
That's discipleship.
Yeah. Jesus didn't step up and, hey guys, help me. He didn't start unraveling them.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so good.
You almost get the impression that if they hadn't unwrapped him, Jesus might have been okay just walking away and leaving him bound up.
Wow.
But that's, what I tell my guys is there's a big difference. I want to know your story of salvation, but there's a big difference between being saved and being free.
Yeah.
And those don't happen on the same day. Sometimes they happen many, many years apart.
Yeah.
And most people don't think about that.
Yeah. What's interesting, Bob, is your freedom kind of started before your salvation in the sense that just the, having relationships began to unravel that stuff.
Yeah.
Do you find in your ministry with guys that there's a lot of guys? So, because what it sounds like when you were pulling out of there was the surface level that you were living in, this cognitive, just kind of strategizing how is this all going to work? But underneath this ball of emotion and things that you weren't even aware you were feeling, and you were going to stop for your daughter's sake, but all of a sudden all this stuff comes up that you weren't aware of, and that's where the stuff that needs to be dealt with, the negative, but also the level of the positive relationship connection has to happen. Do you find that with the guys you're working with, especially when it comes to sexual addiction? That
all the time, all the time. There's always, stuff under the hood, like we say at Teen Challenge. And one of the things we do in our work with guys is take some time and get under the hood. Now, we don't press that. I know of one instance, a guy was seeing someone else, and this other person who was trying to help was just insisting that there's some sort of trauma in your childhood, some sort of loss, some sort of hurt. And we're going to get to that. And it was kind of causing a tension between them. So when he came to me, I said, well, hey, you're human and you live in a fallen world. Of course, there's some stuff there. Let's not sweat that right now. Let's just allow the Spirit to show you what and whenever He's ready to. And so we're not on a timeline here.
That's
and
good.
we'll just hang back. And when the Spirit's ready, because I've noticed that there are times where the Lord would impress something upon me, and kind of like a spoiled brat, my response might be, Lord, why wouldn't you show me that years ago? And the thoughts come, you weren't ready to hear it. You couldn't have handled it back then.
Yeah.
Now you're in a better place.
There's won't name names, but there's a person that you and I both know. One of the things that as they struggled through with that very issue, I recognized they were always looking for the silver bullet.
Yeah.
It was always, so that was another expression of that, looking for, I don't know why I do this. I haven't discovered the wound or the trauma point. And those things are very real. But the fact is, we have to own what we're doing at the surface level. And, God wants to reveal what's underneath the surface in His timing. But if we make my surface behavior contingent upon some secret revelation, some secret, silver bullet, a lot of times we'll never be free because it becomes a stronghold. It's our excuse. I have a wound that I don't know what it is. You know?
Well, that's what I told this guy. So if you're in a traffic accident and your car is upside down in the intersection and you're smelling gas, and the paramedic comes to your window, you're not going to say, hold on, I need to figure out what happened. Don't move anything. Yeah. You're just going to get out of there, and we'll investigate later.
Right, exactly.
So,
I want to know if it was the brakes. Or you can take the front tire off while I lay here and contemplate this.
Right.
Yeah. So wow.
Yeah.
So how do people get a hold of you? How, with this ministry that you're doing, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, libertasmentoring.org. Libertas being the Latin word for freedom. Libertasmentoring.org. Is the best way. I've got a website. They can see what this is all about. If it's what they think the Lord would have them do or not. And I offer folks a half hour for free. Just let's get acquainted and see if what your issues are, what you think you need help with, and if I'm able to help you at all. Because sometimes I'm not the guy. I've got good connections with psychologists, so maybe you need to see a psychologist or a counselor. Maybe you need to see somebody else.
That's awesome,
so I refer people. I've got a psychologist here in town who refers people to me.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
yeah.
You know, 2 Corinthians, you'll be familiar with this passage where Paul says, essentially saying, you know, what we went through, God, the God of all comfort, he says, you know, God comforts us in what we've gone through so that we can in turn comfort those who come behind us and are going through the same thing. And, you know, so it's that idea that our struggle in the past becomes our ministry, the platform, and we become the avenue for freedom in that very specific area. You know, I've often wondered, was it God's will from the foundation of the earth that I spend 14 years at Teen Challenge? Probably not. I was a knucklehead and I got into drugs. So God said, well, let's use that, you know? And so it's a beautiful thing just to see how, you know, really a main emphasis that you have. And you've got such a grasp. I was reading through some of your material and you've got such a grasp of the prominent place, healthy relationships, human connection. It goes right back to that word that Will McFarland said. You know, it's not just you and Jesus; it's you, Jesus, and somebody else. And you've grabbed hold of that, and it not only found freedom for you, but you're bringing that to others.
Yeah. Well, there's a book on sexual addiction, sexual sin that's quite well known, and I've read most of it. I've probably read more of it than you have because I know you're famous for not reading entire books.
You know me well. Bob.
Yeah. And as I read it, this was years ago, I read it and I thought, you know, this is all good. It was a lot of, not tricks, but a lot of tips and good pointers, good ideas for how to come out of sexual sin. It was good stuff. I wouldn't argue any of that, but that was kind of it. That was the book. You can do these things without being saved. Unsaved people can do every one of these things. Bounce my eyes, you know, be careful where I am and who I'm with and, you know, just what my mood is when I enter different situations. Absolutely, please do all those. But that isn't transformative. It's not redemptive. It's not eternal. And what I think the Lord has given me to do is to pass this on to other guys so they can disciple other people. And the overarching goal is we want to make Jesus famous in other people's lives. And just following checklists, that doesn't make Jesus famous. And you could shortcut on those too. When you've got the Spirit of the living God living in you and you want to shortcut on something, you're going to be convicted. So now you've got another decision to make. Am I going to turn away from that primary relationship? And that's where I saw a podcast this past summer. This guy was an 80-year-old Christian psychiatrist who still practices several days a week.
Wow.
And in some part of the country. And he said, it was interesting, he said, he talked about the value of brokenness, repentance, weeping at the altar, and surrender. And he said, you know, our churches used to do that from his age, you know, back. He said it used to be when we went to church, that's just what happened at the altar. People were broken and they repented and they surrendered, and sometimes that involved weeping. And he said, but by and large, our churches today don't make room for that. And he said, if you come by my office where I'm working with a client, and he said, that's all we do. Is I lead them. Yes, I'm a psychiatrist and I have that training and that education and that back. But all I'm doing is I'm leading them to the Lord to a point where if they're willing, they can just surrender and repent. And he said, you know, but they pay me for that. He said, you could get that for free at your church if you went to the right church.
If you went to the right church,
And so, and brokenness and repentance and humility.
Do you? There was a guy I used to speak at Promise Keepers. African-American pastor. But he had this phrase. I'll think of it in about an hour. He used to have this phrase that Christianity is more than accountability. He said the mafia has accountability. Street gangs have accountability.
Yeah.
He said what Christianity is, it's transformation. You know, it's not sin management. It's not just, there are disciplines, and that is the fruit of repentance, that I want to forsake that. But Bob, what you bring to the table is not just the forsaking and doing the hard work and saying, I'm going to do whatever it takes to not avail myself to that path anymore. What you're talking about is, now let's replace this with what was the original design.
Yeah.
We were made for connection.
Yeah.
And in fact, if we have good relation, even with other men, as a man, if I'm connecting on then that inordinate sex drive will begin to come within its proper boundaries. I'm not driven for this false connection that I get in this fantasy world.
Yeah, yeah. There's a great scripture in Exodus 33, verse 11, and it says it. Prior to that, it describes the Israelites pitching this tent of meeting, and Moses would meet with God, and the cloud would come down, and all that. Verse 11 says, when that would happen, when the cloud would descend and Moses would meet with God, verse 11 says, thus the Lord would speak to Moses face to face as a man speaks to his friend. Face to face. Face to face, the Hebrew root of that is alpane. It means breath to breath, nose to nose, eye to eye, like a firefighter giving mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, breathing life into somebody, or a husband and a wife in an embrace. The Lord spoke to Moses face to face as a man speaks to his friend. The second half of that verse gets more interesting for me. It says, but Joshua, a young man, wouldn't leave. He wouldn't depart. And I've often wondered, okay, why not? What's he doing? Well, we know how the story ends with Joshua. I think he's being prepared.
Yeah.
He's being prepared by having intercourse with the Lord, by being intimate and hearing from him and surrendering to him. And he's in relationship with him so he can be in relationship with them.
That's so good. I just got back from a couple-day retreat, and I got stuck back in Psalm 62 again. And this really stood out to me, and it has to do with what we're talking about. David says, oh God, you are my God. It's when he's running from Absalom. Absalom's trying to take his throne. So David cries out, he writes down, oh God, you are my God. Earnestly I seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh faints for you, as in a dry and a weary land where there is no water. So he says his soul thirsts and then his flesh faints. And it struck me, fainting flesh. You think, well, aren't I supposed to weaken my flesh? But you remember when Jesus is, in the on the Mount of Olives, he's praying at Gethsemane. He says, your spirit is willing, but your flesh is weak. This is a problem. You got weak flesh. So his soul, he says, my soul thirsts, but my flesh faints. And it struck me that fainting flesh is from a soul that's not satiated with the right things. So if I don't have that communion you're talking about, so I've got to stay there until I'm satisfied. My soul thirst, my soul hunger for connection with him ultimately, and then with others, that strengthens my flesh to stand against that temptation.
That's good.
But what happens is if my soul is thirsty and I'm not dealing with that, then the way that's going to manifest is weak flesh that will go out and sin.
Yeah.
And,
That's good.
Yeah.
That reminds me, as you say that, it reminds me of Psalm 42, as a deer pants for the water brook, so my soul pants for you. And the panting is, I just read an article on this, the Hebrew word is ahava, which means to pant and to breathe after, to long for, to like I can't go on without this. And the author said, even though it cost him his life, the Lord was panting for us and stopped to establish the cool drink of relationship.
Wow. Wow.
I can die happy now,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was the key of David's life. That was the key of Moses, Joshua.
Yeah.
That they knew where the water was. And the water was, it's not found in all these, the fake pacifier
Yeah.
The only place to really find the water. He is the water of life. And the fact is, I drink from that well in fellowship with other people.
Yeah.
So it's not just me in a monastery seeking
Right.
the Lord alone, although that's good.
I like that.
But it's in fellowship. And it's not just in fellowship, because ultimately I short circuit. I'm not really satisfying that. And I end up with weak flesh.
Yeah, and he does that in us in the context of our own personality. You and I talked about this years ago.
Yeah, I know where you're going.
Yeah, you are a sanguine person,
Yeah.
and you've said when you have had a real busy month, week, whatever, and you're fried and you need to recharge, you'll invite a bunch of people over.
Yeah.
And I think you're crazy. Because when I'm in that state, I'm sending everybody out. I'm sitting on my deck with a book, and I'm not even reading the book. It's just all alone. And it's just God wires us different ways, and He wants to meet us in that.
Yeah.
But so many times we don't like ourselves, we don't like the wiring, so we push it away.
Right.
Not realizing when I push away that natural wiring He's given me, I'm really pushing Him away.
Yeah. Another thing you and I talked about years ago, and this is the difference between you and I, because you're a very disciplined person. Even before you got saved, you said, you know what? I say no to relationships. I'm going to say yes from now on. You just decided. That's to me is so strange. I admire that about you, but that's so wild. There's people that need inspiration, and then there's people that can do it out of discipline. And we were talking about this one time, and you told me, you said, sometimes I'll just do things out of sheer discipline, and I realize the reality is not there, and I've got to be careful. And I've got to be careful because if I don't have the inspiration, I'll just quit.
Yeah.
And so I know I've got to fuel my own fire. And as I was processing this years ago, I came across this quote by Oswald Chambers. Devastated me. He said, "Your need for inspiration is the measure of your laziness."
Wow.
And there's probably truth to that.
Yeah.
But I just know that I can't wait to be externally inspired. I've got to learn how do I stoke my own fire.
Yeah. At the church I attend, just as I feel led, I get on my knees during worship, and we sit up front. So I don't know. I doubt if anybody else is doing it. The times I've been in the back, for whatever reason, nobody else gets on there. It's me. And when I do that because Jesus is worthy. He's earned that respect, that honor. But when the thought comes to my mind, I'm going to do that, I always hear two things from the enemy. And I hear them loud and clear. And this gets into, I'm going to do it anyway. Yeah. What I hear is, once I get on my knees, what I hear is, you look ridiculous. You look ridiculous. Here in this room, other people have their hands raised or whatever. You're the only guy on your knees. That's just ridiculous. The other thing I hear is, and I say, yeah, well, Jesus is worth it. I'm doing it anyway. And then I hear is, okay, you're really something, aren't you? Boy, they think all the people who see, they think you're really spiritual. You really got it. You're really proving a point here. I hear that all the time. And just out of, I guess, discipline, I don't know. I think it's love for the Lord. It's like, nah, I'm doing it anyway. Yeah. Now, these days, the getting on my knees isn't so hard. Getting back up sometimes an issue.
Boy, isn't that the truth? Yeah. Yeah, but that is it. Excuse me. We need to learn to cooperate with our wiring, know who we are, and then just cooperate with that, and then still wrestle through those head games. And
Yep.
Well, Bob, man, I appreciate you coming, taking out the time, and I just appreciate your friendship all these years.
Likewise. I can tell you from this side of the table, this is like Christmas Day for me to be able to sit with you, Dave. It truly is.
Oh,
I
man.
love it.
Yeah, so for them to get a hold of you again, tell them.
LibertasMentoring.org.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.